for you. Whether your parents like it or not, I am an ogre.
Effective.
And guess what, princess? That's not about to change.
This is a classic example of talking past each other. They're speaking, but they're not communicating. This happens when each person in a conversation is focused on different aspects of a situation without recognizing the other's focus or feelings. Fiona's message is, be more like me in this context, be more understanding, more accommodating. While Shrek is saying, I'm done being judged for being an ogre, that's not something I can change even if I wanted to. He displays reactance here, which is a person's reaction against the threat to lose their freedom. In this case, Shrek sees the situation as a threat to his autonomy and identity. So what does he do? He yells at the poodle. He's engaging in a behavior meant to reclaim his autonomy and rebel against the unfairness and the stereotyping. It's like when someone is constantly being accused of being selfish, even if they're not. So at some point they end up saying, well, I'll show you what selfish is, and engage in that kind of behavior. Okay? Aggressive.
I've made changes for you, Shrek. Think about that.
Okay. Fiona's response is showing that she's unaware of the internal struggle Shrek goes through as she's focused on her own desire to please her parents. But that's what makes the situation even more unfair. This comment is somehow manipulative because Shrek never asked her to change who she is. Quite the opposite. That was a choice she made in the first movie, which was a beautiful moment about her accepting and embracing her ogre side rather than being ashamed of it. And now it seems like that's being thrown in Shrek's face. But the real issue here is that she's forgetting Shrek doesn't have a human side. She had that choice to make, but he never had that experience. So the expectations she has on him are not only not communicated, but they're also exceeding his current skills. That's why I kept saying that she should have prepared him for meeting her parents, not just from a royal demeanor perspective, but from a human perspective. You know, what people consider polite or normal, because until now, Shrek never spoke to a human without them being terrified of him or wanting to, you know, cancel his subscription to breathing. He cannot go from monster to mister overnight, okay? Besides, I don't think he desires that, and we need to take that into consideration, yeah? Oh, man. This sucks. Lesson for Fiona. Learn to recognize when your partner is in distress, scared, or at the very least be very attentive when people insult them, and make sure you validate their pain and hurt. Lesson for Shrek. Get better at communication instead of getting defensive. And for you guys, when in doubt, ask some questions. A good one in this situation could be, what more could have I done to please your parents, considering your father insulted me? But I do have to mention, Shrek gets some sympathy points from me as he is surrounded by people invalidating him continuously, including Donkey at this point. To be honest, I'm not sure why he doesn't get any sort of understanding.
I knew this would happen.
You should. You started it.
True.
I can hardly believe that, Lilian. I mean, really. He's the ogre, not me.
I think,
Are you
Harold,
sure?
you're taking this a little too personally.
Oh, you have no idea. Indeed, Harold, as we all know, is actually a frog, therefore, of course, he's taking this personally. His insistence in labeling Shrek in such a negative light could be a way to externalize his inner conflict about his own identity, because he sees it as monstrous and undesirable, right? By criticizing Shrek, he is able to validate his feeling of inadequacy by making them applicable to someone else. Also, there's the deal with the Fairy Godmother, but something tells me that this inner conflict would exist regardless of that.
This is Fiona's choice.
Yes,
Let him know.
she was supposed to choose the prince we picked out for her. I mean, you expect me to give my blessings to this thing?
Fiona does, and she'll never forgive you if you don't. I don't want to lose our daughter again, Harold.
Harold and Lilian are having a similar situation to Shrek and Fiona. They're talking past each other. Harold is focused on Shrek and how could he ever give his blessing to him, while Lilian focuses on her daughter and on her happiness and well-being.
Oh, you act as if love is totally predictable. Don't you remember when we were young and, we used to walk down by the lily pond and they were in bloom?
Our first kiss. It's not the same!
Why? Yeah, it's not the same because Harold became human and Shrek didn't. So in a way, there's also a wound of unfairness within Harold. How dares Shrek be himself and get to have love? He might project his own frustrations and the strict standards he was forced to adhere to onto Shrek. I think under normal circumstances, Harold could be persuaded by Lilian to give him a chance, but considering the deals with the Fairy Godmother, this becomes impossible.
I'd like to know how it could get any worse!
Hello, Harold. What
There you
happened?
go.
Better get in. We need to talk.
Oh shit.
After I endured blistering winds, scorching desert, I climbed to the highest room in the tallest tower.
Whoa. Relax, woman.
He endures blistering winds and scorching desert. He climbs to the highest bloody room of the tallest bloody tower. And what does he find? Some gender-confused wolf telling him that his princess
If I could
is already married. We made a deal, Harold. And I assume
That
you
you
don't
did.
want me to go back on my part.
Indeed not.
So Fiona and Charming will be together.
God, you're so
Oh,
annoying.
believe me, Harold. It's what's best. Not only for your daughter,
Right.
but for your kingdom.
Sure, because she knows what's best for everyone, remember? Tyrant archetype is characterized by despotism, manipulation, and self-centeredness, all things we see in this brief scene. The difference between the tyrant and the villain archetypes is that the villain often embodies evil and they know they're evil, while the tyrant believes in their own version of good, so they never consider themselves evil. In real life, tyrants might be overbearing parents pushing tough love, but missing out on emotional bonds, or it could be partners who take charge of every decision, big or small. Now, the mother tyrant exercises control over every aspect of the child's life, disguising it as for their own good. But it primarily serves her goals, and as you see, she achieves that control by suppressing the child's independence, which she disguises as affection. Now, all of this is emotional manipulation, including but not limited to guilt trips, emotional blackmail, and flattery. I mean, this woman orchestrated his entire life, Charming's, I mean, and she didn't achieve that with gentleness.
What am I supposed to do about it?
Use your imagination.
Look at him, embracing the shadows. Oh, and speaking of shadows. In this story, Harold represents the ruler archetype, but in its shadow. Harold's actions are initially guided by a desire to preserve the kingdom's stability and to uphold his royal duties, even if it means submitting to the manipulative demands of the Fairy Godmother. His submission is driven by a sense of responsibility and a fear of losing his current lifestyle, showing his darker side where decisions are more about maintaining power and order than about moral righteousness. So we see him here hiring someone to deal with Shrek. That moment when it's 2 in the morning and you cannot sleep. I honestly cannot relate, because the moment my head hits the pillow, I'm gone. I'm in a coma. I don't dream. I just wake up the next morning. Man, it must be a bit weird seeing all of these things and not fitting in any of them, you know? And the ogre is down, of course. Now, Shrek's discovering Fiona's indoctrination and conditioning, but instead of seeing it as brainwashing and feel for her, he instead sees it as a confirmation he doesn't belong to her or her world. That triggers a negative self-evaluation based on the difference between what he considers Fiona's ideal type, which is Prince Charming, and himself, the less desirable option. This is when people want to change for their partners or other people, but they shouldn't. If you want to change just to make someone else happy or meet their expectations without genuine personal conviction or insight, know you're either searching for validation, you're codependent, or at the very least, you're insecure. In fact, Shrek's insecurity is what doesn't allow him to see things more clearly and realize how difficult it is for Fiona to deal with that experience in the background. I'm an ogre!
Ah!